Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, we're continuing our series on the 7 modern wonders of the world, this time focusing on Petra.
So here's the weird thing. Like, why do they call them modern? Like, this was in, like, the BCs.
Well, there were the ancient ones as well, which were even older, and I think
Right.
made up. I mean,
Like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon
yeah,
or whatever it
and
was.
the Colossus. Is that it? Colossus
I
of
think so.
Rhodes or something like. Okay, so there was this giant statue that boats sailed between its legs. It was so large.
That feels
and now
like
it's gone forever, and we can't find any of it.
not a toe, not a pinky.
Yeah, not even a toe.
That's very Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It is Lord of the Rings. You're right.
So
yeah.
just so everybody knows what Petra is. So if you've ever seen Indiana Jones, I forget which one it was, the second, third one, whichever one had Sean Connery in it as his father. At the end of
Raiders
that movie,
of the Lost Ark.
That may have been Lost Ark. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Irregardless, which I think is the wrong way to irregardlessly. Regardless, Petra is a portion of Petra is that front of that stone carved city that you see them going into. They meet one of the knights of the round table and they do the cup of everlasting life and blah 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 blah.
The Last Crusade.
That's what it was. So
yes,
so that's what Petra is. Unfortunately, I'll get to it, and it's kind of turned into a bit of a tourist trap recently. But that's Petra, and it's considered one of the 7. I don't know why they chose the number 7 modern wonders of the world.
Yeah.
So it's located. So where is it? So it is 150 miles south of Jerusalem.
Where's Jerusalem?
Jerusalem is midway between Jordan and where's that? In Ahmad, the capital of Jordan. And about midway between Damascus, Syria, and the Red Sea. So
pinpoints it for me.
And pinpoints it for you. You know exactly where Damascus, Syria, and the Red Sea are, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why it was located there is because it was an ideal location for a hub of commerce in the ancient world. So location-wise, that's where it is. How do you not know where Jerusalem is?
I do. I was just asking.
Oh,
for
you
more
were just
clarity.
being a jerk.
I that would be a way to describe it. Yes.
Okay. So it was. So the site is considered significant to historians and archaeologists alike because the way it was actually cut out of the rock itself. So rather than actually using building blocks, they actually carved, in most cases, into the stone, creating these pretty magnificent architectural marvels. There's actually multiple periods there too. There's like Roman periods and like previous periods, which I think we'll get into.
Everybody took this place over.
Yeah, they did. Apparently kept on getting sacked by the next, whoever was in charge.
What's interesting is it's like defined as this like really great strategic military location, right? Because there's only that tiny like canyon to go through to get to it. And it keeps getting sacked or like just taken over. Like eventually they're just like, all right, you own us now.
Yeah, or it was abandoned too. At one point, it was like, if it's so cool, why would you leave it?
Well, that part I understand. Like, it's cool looking, but it sounds like it sucks to live there. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay.
Petra was founded over 2,000 years ago, Luke, along the ancient trade routes between Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea, like you said, located in modern day Jordan. Fun fact for you.
Oh no.
For you and you only. So everyone else close your ears.
Hold your ears.
Petra comes from the Greek word Petros, which means rocks, and this probably replaced the biblical name of Sela, S-E-L-A, Sela. I don't know.
You nailed it. Yep.
Good. Petra was home to as many as 30,000 people. It was full of temples and theaters and gardens and villas and all sorts of good stuff. And most importantly to me, camel caravans, because that's cool. And so this was really big for the trading routes. So the story of Petra begins with a group of Arabian nomads called the Nabateans.
You nailed it.
Thank you. So they were nomads. They moved from place to place. They lived off the land. They herded camels and sheep and goats and all sorts of good animals. And they gained control of important trade routes that moved spices, primarily spices and like incense, from Arabia to Egypt and the Mediterranean Sea. So they were really good at making trips around that area. And we know that these nomadic merchants became super rich off of all their spices and smelling good stuff as desert traders. And they were like, oh my God, this is so much work. And they gave up all of these tents that they were living in and made these amazing monuments and houses and living dwellings, whatever, carved into the rock, which became Petra. Pretty interesting, right?
It's very interesting.
Fun fact again for you, Luke.
Hmm?
Obviously, they were in the desert, right? So deserts are not known for having a lot of water, it turns out. But an impressive system of rock cut channels and underground water pipes carried water from permanent springs and like seasonal streams that showed up. And these nomads, or previously nomads, also developed a way to collect and store the water in watertight holes and cisterns.
So is this is essentially the movie Dune?
I did not watch the movie Dune, but
Not even the original Dune?
no, I'm like not nearly as old as you.
Oh my goodness. So the original Dune, they're on Arrakis. It's a giant desert planet, but yet the people that live on the planet, they have these cisterns below the, the
And that's
ground.
where the worms come from.
Well, no, the worms are there, but this is where they would
Oh.
store the water that they would live off in.
And the worms don't eat their water or drink their water?
I don't know. I think the worms eat sand. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You didn't watch the new Dune movie?
No.
I thought you were a
Should I?
sci-fi kind of person.
I am. Is it that good?
I thought it was really good.
Okay.
Just
I knew
saying.
I knew you had mixed feelings because of the actors in it. And
Yeah, but it was all right.
okay. So this water was all hidden underground. It kept it safe from evaporating, and it kept it from enemies from stealing it. Throughout time, Rome eventually took over. This was around like 100, 106 AD, and they ruled for about 300 years or so. They didn't change a whole lot other than some of the architecture. And then eventually they moved their trade capitals north. And this was kind of when Petra died off, right? So then in 363 AD, Petra suffers another blow, right? It wasn't bad enough that Rome was like, I'm out of here. This is too deserty for me. Let's trade somewhere else. There was a massive earthquake that destroyed a whole bunch of the buildings and the water supply system. And it turns out water is pretty important. This natural disaster marked the turning point for the Nabateans. And by 700 AD, only a few people lived around Petra. And that was that. About 500 or so years would pass, Luke, and the ancient city was rediscovered by the Western explorers. So kind of like our episode on Chichen Itza, go check that one out. This one just got lost as well for hundreds of years. And it makes no sense to me how these massive cities just go missing for hundreds of years at a time. But in 1812, a Swiss explorer by the name of Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, intrigued by the stories he heard of this lost city, dressed as an Arab sheik to beguile the guides into leading him to this location. So he was very tricky. He tricked these folks into leading him here. And his reports of Petra's remarkable site and its fanciful caves, as the place I stole this from said, had adventurers all starting to show up. And like you said, it's become a bit of a tourist trap. We can all thank Johann here for that. In 1985, it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And in 2007, much like Chichen Itza, it was named a modern wonder of the world.
So question.
I will answer it improperly, probably.
Why do you think the Swiss always discover stuff? Like you don't hear like, oh, the Portuguese explorer or the German explorer. It's always
Christopher Columbus Portuguese.
Okay, maybe that was a
but
bad
he
example.
sailed under some other flag.
The Italians, I think.
Maybe.
And apparently he was a terrible person. Anytime you bring up Christopher Columbus, my daughter gets mad because apparently
he gets mad about that. He's not real good.
he was not a really nice person. But it's always the Swiss. I wonder why the Swiss are so inquisitive.
I don't know. That is a good question. All I know about the Swiss listeners is they have cheese with holes in it and they make chocolate.
Ooh,
and they have banks.
Yeah.
If we have any Swiss listeners, that's a great call out there, Luke. Email us and tell us why you're so into exploring.
Inquisitive was the word that I used.
There you go. Inquisitive. Before we move on with inquisitive exploration, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
I have to assume it's UNESCO.
That's who I was going to go with too.
Petra Tourism, Tourism Jordan.
Tourism.com.
No.
Use the code Unprofessional Engineering for 10% off of your trip. No, we don't have any sponsors, but we do have shout outs, which is way better than money. KCR is the first write-in. I wanted to suggest another great game, non-violent, based off of our Video Games for Engineers episode. Go check it out.
Gotcha.
Which is called Surviving Mars, which again is another space-themed game, which they all seem to be. In the game, you land with drones and basically supplies in our rocket on Mars, and the object is to collect the resources and develop the foundation to colonize Mars. I recommend this game as it incorporates a great deal of systems engineering by having to create sustainable systems which will keep your colonists alive while you expand your population. Thank you for the suggestion, Casey. I shall check that game out, but I know Luke will not.
No, I won't. I would just watch the movie The Martian with Matt Damon, because it's essentially that's what I'm guessing this game is.
Sort of, but he only is one person. He's not really colonizing it, is he?
Okay. Gotcha.
Shane A. I'm currently a field service tech and was automotive tech for Ford and Dodge. Is Dodge still a thing? Do they make Dodges?
Yeah, they do.
My question is, I'm wanting to get into engineering and love cars and gaming, and was wondering what type of engineering I should go for. I'm currently 25 and from Philly. We won't hold that against you. Originally, and now I live in Berks County. Really looking for any type of advice. Caution about engineers not being hands-on was what I noted there. So I already said, hey, if you're into like the fixing cars thing and stuff like that, maybe an associate's degree or mechanical engineering tech might be the right way to go. I don't know. I just know that when I went for mechanical engineering, I thought, oh, cool, I'm going to build stuff. And it turns out you don't do any building behind the desk.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. What really came out was, what was that? You did an externship where you were doing like some facility type work.
Sylvania.
Yeah. What degree would that probably be? That would
industrial engineering. Probably?
I think industrial might not be bad, because I think it's going to combine mechanical engineering with more hands-on, like the process of how the cars get moved through an assembly line and optimizing that process. Because unless you're into like industrial design and you want to be like the creator of the car,
that as
like
well,
the stylistic, like me, I can't draw a curved line to save my life.
I can't draw a straight line with a straight edge.
And I feel like there's probably a small group of people that do car design, where there's probably a huge group of people that do like the facility type work, the assembly line design and optimization and stuff like that. So you'd still be involved with cars. It'd probably be very hands-on. That would be my suggestion, is to check that out, because I think a general mechanical engineering would be okay, but you'd probably be better off if you kind of specialized on maybe like the assembly process, Yeah,
I think it's tough to get the gaming part in along with the automotive things. I thought like maybe comp sci or something like that might be able to do some sort of integrated systems with the cars, but yeah, that's a tough one, but good luck. If any of you would like some advice, if you would like a shout out, if you would like, I don't know, anything from us at all, I'd be happy to give it to you if I ever look at your email. Go ahead and email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
And don't forget to wow, my delay there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. We love the reviews, and as always, you can tell your smart devices to play the Unprofessional Engineering Podcast.
Awesome. So I was going to look at how Petra was built. Do you want to talk about something first?
No, I have some stuff on how it was built. I think they discovered some of the more recent discoveries have kind of determine some of those techniques. So yeah, you can get into that.
All right. So in the past couple of decades, research on this location has really amped up. So again, it had gone missing for a really long time somehow. I guess this one's a little more reasonable to me. It's in the desert, but research is amped up now that more people are visiting. Numerous Jordanian
Yep,
and
you got it.
international teams, thanks, have carried out really big surveys and excavations within the settlement. Within Petra itself, the bedrock consists of 3 sandstone formations. I can't say any of these things. Disi, D-I-S-I, above the Ishrin. Who knows?
No, you got
So
it.
there's
You nailed it.
tombs in the city center that are carved out of various sub-levels of the formations. There's quarries for blocks that were cut out for
Fun
the formations
fact,
as well. Yeah.
800 tombs have been discovered thus far.
Wow. And that's
And
only a small fraction, probably.
yeah, because they said that, like, as of right now, because of the earthquake you mentioned earlier, and you
Yeah.
know, this is in the desert, sand covering things up.
It does do that.
They're guessing only about 15% of the overall city. Because remember, this place
That's
housed
small.
it housed 30,000 people at
Yeah.
one point.
Yeah.
Only 15% has actually been explored and discovered by archaeologists. So the rest of the city's either, you know, under rock from earthquakes or buried in the sand forever.
I think that, well, that's sad but interesting. I feel like it's interesting that either just I or maybe everybody views these things like Petra being that one Indiana Jones carved into the mountainside building, or Chichen Itza being the one big
Yep.
pyramid, but really their entire settlements
and
that
cities,
we're talking about. Yeah. Interesting. There's also harder limestone that was used, but this was actually imported from the area of Wadi Musa, obviously, above Petra. And
everybody
from
know that's where
other
my
areas.
sandstone guy gets his sandstone from. I
Yeah,
got a sandstone
clearly.
guy. That's where he
Yeah.
gets it.
Most of these areas are around 50 kilometers southeast as well. There was some white and gray marble that was used kind of sparingly in the structures, but this was also imported from other regions. There haven't been a lot of studies on the marble to figure out where it came from exactly yet, but they think it came from Luna quarries in Italy, and then it was like brought over. So
I was gonna
maybe
say,
it
if
was
not,
shipped over.
there's a marble guy down in the rocks that does a good job.
McKee's Rocks?
Yeah, McKee's Rocks.
Okay, good. Well, at least we have that going.
Could
for
be
us.
from there. I'm sorry.
The source of the granite columns found. How great would it be if it came from McKee's Rocks? The granite columns found at Petra is also in doubt, but they definitely came from outside of the Nabatean kingdom. So that's not super good. These nomads, former nomads, would use like trees and things that they chopped down and brought in to give tensile reinforcement for the masonry on the walls. So they were using wood for support. It would also support roof structures, and they would use the trees in the area or that were brought in to construct scaffolding to form, you know, things to go do all of the work. They do edges and arches with them as well. They imported their construction of timber from Lebanon a lot of the time, and they used bronze and iron fixtures, which I thought was interesting, fittings and hooks and rods and other things as well. Nearly all of the landscape of Petra is sandstone bedrock, which is where some of the locations were selected for quarries. The distance for the buildings to be constructed, the geomorphology, the landscape, the quality of the block sizes, all of that stuff. But what gets really interesting is the math that they've kind of used, or at least for me, I think it's interesting. It probably isn't. Some researchers have broken into classification for the different quarries that were used: primary, leveling, and tomb quarries. The primary ones were open simply to produce sandstone blocks. So all they were doing was carving sandstone
building
blocks
blocks
out of these. Right. They calculate that the probable yield of each quarry, assuming wastage of about 30%, because tools and stuff weren't exactly good at that time. They come up with a total usable amount of 78,900 cubic meters of usable blocks. Each cubic meter, which is a ton, it's not a ton, it's way more than a ton. Each cubic meter of usable stone represents at least 4 large blocks of 0.5 by 0.5 by 1 meter, which resulted in 315,600 blocks for building out structures.
And you know what's crazy? So you talk about like they're using super primitive tools for carving these blocks. First of all, like it had to be difficult, time consuming, tons of labor.
Absolutely.
But now these cats have to move the blocks from the quarry, hoist them, put them in place. I mean, if you think about just the engineering that goes into this, like, so I saw there was some like artists renderings of how they did some of these different things. So they used essentially like conveyors. So they would take the trees you mentioned, and they would essentially create rollers and roll these along trees. And then the hoisting systems to lift them into place. They did a lot of ramps, very similar to what they did with pyramids. They used ramps to get things like temporary ramps that they would build to get things into place. But just the thought of like how long it would take to take one of those blocks from the quarry over there. I mean, it was one of those things that was probably like never ending, the construction of this place.
Goodness. Yeah. Remember our episode on Easter Island and the giant heads? And like how they moved them. Those? That was
same kind of thing.
Similar. Yeah. So we talked about all of the blocks and the wastage. They think that 30% wastage could have been used for filling for the buildings and the streets that they put. Then there were the leveling site quarries, which were necessary to provide a flat space for the construction. So basically they were just making a flat space to build the large buildings like the Great Temple. Things like that. The total volume of usable blocks removed there was about 110,000 blocks, which is a lot. And then the final category was the tomb quarries, like we said. So the enormous rock cut tomb facades at Petra were all done on flat cliff sides, right? 63,000 cubic meters of stones was extracted, which was another 252,000 blocks for a grand total, Luke, of 677,600 blocks. And so, like, where did all these blocks go, right? That's kind of the question here. And so here's where they went, just for you. A total estimate of volume of stone required to furnish 3 well-documented buildings that we know of would be 7,000 cubic meters, 15,000, and 3,000. So that's 25,000 cubic meters. Since only about 10% of the total area or 15% of the total area was found, we can conclude that the quarry sources would have been supplemented by the other stones in various building sites. So, you know, we used up a lot of the blocks on these giant constructions, and then a lot of the other stuff was just carved into the mountainsides.
Interesting.
I thought so.
I'm still flabbergasted. Like I did a retaining wall in my backyard, by myself.
Yeah.
And I rented a backhoe for the day. And I felt like it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Like digging out like where I was going to put the stone, hauling in, the gravel for the base, moving the blocks around. And literally it was like, I remember I said to my wife, I said, this is the hardest thing I've ever built in my entire life, like by far. And then to like think about what these cats were doing without a backhoe, without a post hole digger. I mean, a real shovel. I mean,
yeah. Before we move on, you know what we need? This week's Luke's rant.
Okay, this rant is Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, here we go.
You ready? Everybody loves Indiana Jones. Everybody loved Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everybody loved The Last Crusade. I forget what the third one was. Do you know what everybody hated? Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, that's true. They did.
And do you know why they hated it? Because of Shia LaBeouf was in it. If you happen to know what that, who he is.
I did watch that one. Did you watch it?
It was one of those ones where like I was in it, and it was like I wish I didn't start the movie, because it kind of ruined the franchise for me. It was just, it was such a bad bad movie. And so this is more of a rant of, maybe Harrison Ford and, I'm sure they're listening, and the movie studios. But like,
sure.
know when is when. Like, perfect example. Stranger Things, which I know you're a big fan of.
I am.
Season 4, I think, is coming out. They're doing like this 2-part, thing. Like, they're ending it. It's the end of it.
It's a 2-part thing?
So they're doing like half of season 4 is coming out, and then like another half of season 4. Basically, they're making people wait because they're jerks.
They are.
So, but they're doing it right. They're just going to end it. There might be some spin-offs down the road, but like, it's going to finish. Like, and they're finishing well. These kids are getting too old. The storyline is maybe getting a little, much. So
yeah.
So my rant is
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf ruins everything.
There you go. I feel like HBO does a good job of ending things before they jump the shark or something. I mean, they could have made Game of Thrones not terrible for the ending, but other than that, which wasn't their fault, I don't think. I think they do a good job of it.
Yeah, I think they do too. I think Game of Thrones was good. It was just the writing got bad.
The writing got bad.
Yeah, it got really. Yeah, it ended up being all about the wrong stuff the last season or two.
Yeah.
So,
a couple other things about the construction, Luke.
Please. And then I got a bunch of quick facts.
They did something interesting where they would like line blocks, like 2 sides of blocks, and then they would fill the gap in between, like the core, with extra rubble that they had lying around. And this was actually used to help stabilize the walls during earthquakes. Not so much the massive one that wiped out the city, but the smaller earthquakes that would come around. Also, roof construction was really complex. So the local bedrock didn't allow for really like long, unsupported spans of single blocks. But the architects had learned at some point in like the early BCs when they were making this stuff to roof interior spaces with cross arches carrying wooden beams and short sandstone slabs. So that was kind of cool, I thought. Now you said you had fun facts and other stuff. Let me hear it.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna kind of roll down these. So, what did you call them? The Nabateans?
Nabateans. Let's go with Nabateans. I like that.
The Nabateans were sun.
Nabateans.
Yeah, the Nabateans were sun worshippers.
Okay.
They also built altars on the tops of their houses to worship the sun. The name of the narrow canyon that you mentioned, it's about 1 kilometer right at the entrance of the city of Petra. It's the super famous thing from the movie. When you Google Petra, it's the number 1 picture that comes up. It has 80 not about 80 kilometer. No, that can't be. Yeah, 80 kilometer tall cliffs on the side, and
what?
I have to be reading that wrong. It's bound by 80 kilometers. That has to be like.
Is the pathway 80 kilometers?
Yeah,
long?
I must have cut and pasted that wrong. But the name of the cliffs is called Al-S-I-Q. How would you say that?
S-I-Q?
S-I-Q. Al-Sick?
Sure.
I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
So the city actually has 3 major different periods, and this is why the architecture
I see 76 meters high.
Okay.
Does that sound better?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Maybe I did some bad cutting and pasting.
Okay.
So the periods are the Edomites, which was before the Nabateans,
Okay.
slightly before that, then the Nabateans, and then the Romans. So this is why the archaeologists have just there's clearly distinctive different architecture and styles throughout the building. You mentioned it's been known to house a number of people, about 30,000 people. And the crazy thing is, most of the development was done by the Nabateans. So, think about what they were doing. So they were doing plumbing, stonemason, carving, architectural stuff, woodworking. I mean, they had elaborate systems. So the fact that they were doing this, they're considered like a super skilled people in like the commercial trades of building. And then the last thing,
2,000 years ago, and they're still better engineers than us.
I know. And then the last thing is the city was captured in the 7th century I'm sorry. It was in the Crusades came in the 12th century and rediscovered that. So that's where the Last Crusade Indiana Jones movie comes in, is the Crusades going through there. So now
Ah,
Petra is actually very much a part of the Christian faith. So
oh,
it's a big part of a pilgrimage for folks, and there's all kinds of theories about Petra and how that ties into the Christian faith and things that are written in the Bible and stuff like that. All kinds of interesting things you can check out.
interesting. I don't know if I'm ever going to go see Petra. What about you?
I mean, if I was there, I definitely would. I mean, I've
Oh,
always,
yeah. Well,
I mean,
what am I going to be like? Oh, I'm just going to Jordan,
I don't know. So I'm huge. I'm a huge history buff,
going
and
to Damascus.
I think there's some places that are really interesting. Like I would love to see like Jerusalem and Jordan, because I feel like so much history has happened there. I'd love to see
Yeah.
parts of Europe. I'd love to see parts of Asia, and like no one says, "Oh, I want to go to Canada for history." Like it's just like nobody does that, you know.
Eh?
Like, but you go to like parts of Africa and Asia and Europe, and the Middle East is like super rich history.
Would you rather see Machu Picchu or Petra?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Machu
Yeah,
Picchu, because we're gonna do Machu Picchu at some
we're
point,
going
right?
to. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
What about the Great Wall of China or Petra?
I'd probably say Petra. Machu Picchu's at the very top of my list.
Oh, what
Yeah,
about the Taj Mahal?
it's definitely there because I love the
It's in your top
architecture.
7 modern wonders.
It's in my top 7 for me, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely there. I mean, I love the architecture. I love the culture. I love the like everything about like that, the Taj Mahal and
I think
I
I'd
love all
rather
of
see
these.
Petra than the Taj Mahal.
I mean, the Great Wall, it's a wall.
I saw the Great Wall
And
already, so that's off my
according
list.
to the Matt Damon movie, it was just to keep monsters out.
Is that so?
He did one of those not like U.S. movies. It was like an Asian film company, and it was called The Great Wall, and it was all about Matt Damon fighting monsters. And that's why the Great Wall was built. So I have to assume there's some legitimacy
I
there.
assume that must be the case. I thought the Great Wall was really cool,
Oh yeah, you were there,
but maybe
right?
not that really cool. Like maybe not fly to China to see the Great Wall cool.
When were you there?
Like 10 years ago, maybe.
Work trip, right? You were there for some.
Yeah, I was there
training
for
or-
like a month training people.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
terrible, but like Shanghai was super cool. Like the Forbidden City, there's a lot of great stuff going
Yeah.
on in Beijing. The Great Wall, I mean, it was great.
Did you see the teriyaki or
Teriyaki, the Terracotta Army.
The Terracotta Army.
Yeah. It was all very cool.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully you all enjoyed Petra. And if any of you have been there, why don't you email us and tell us what it was all about and how cool it was and send us your pictures? You can do that by emailing us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. And until next time,
See ya.